It's Tuesday, February 7th. This is Africa 54.
More than 5,000 people are dead in Turkey and Syria as rescue workers sift through the rubble of collapsed buildings to find survivors in the aftermath of a powerful earthquake. US President Joe Biden delivers his second State of the Union address to a divided Congress, the nation, and the world Tuesday night. He's likely to touch on the US economy, public health, police reform, gun control, immigration, and Russia's war in Ukraine. And some Nigerians are cashing in on the smiling faces of presidential election frontrunners. We'll have a report. All this and much more coming up on Africa 54.
We begin our broadcast with the rescue of Ghanaian footballer Christian Atsu from the rubble of a collapsed building following a massive earthquake in Turkey. Ghanaian authorities confirmed Tuesday that Atsu, a 31-year-old representative of the national team who is playing club football in Turkey, was found alive in the debris of an earthquake that killed over 5,000 people in Turkey and in neighboring Syria. Rescue crews in Turkey and Syria are working feverishly Tuesday to find survivors buried in the rubble of buildings toppled by powerful earthquakes that struck the region on Monday and left more than 5,000 people dead. After a night in which temperatures fell close to freezing, Tuesday brought more quakes with more than 20 of magnitude 4.0 or greater shaking the area along the border between the two countries. A White House statement says U.S. President Joe Biden spoke with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday to offer condolences and says the United States will send any and all aid needed to help. A State Department spokesperson echoed the president's pledge as countries worldwide rush assistance to Turkey.
We are committed to doing what we can on both sides of the border, to helping our Turkish allies respond in the first instance with rescue and recovery efforts. That effort will be underway soon with U.S. assistance, but also with funding for recovery and broader response efforts. The same is true on the other side of the border, Saeed. We are determined to do what we can to address the humanitarian needs of the Syrian people. We've done that over the course of the 12-year civil war to the tune of billions of dollars. We do that through a different process. In Turkey, we have a partner in the government. In Syria, we have a partner in the form of NGOs on the ground who are providing humanitarian support.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged for humanitarian aid at the start of a General Assembly meeting Monday, convened to hear him outline his priorities for 2023.
Before we begin, I want to convey my deep sadness about the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. I extend my condolences to the families of the victims. The United Nations is mobilizing to support the emergency response, and so let's work together in solidarity to assist all those hit by this disaster, many of whom were already in dire need of humanitarian aid.
Erdogan has declared 7 days of national mourning in Turkey. In other parts of Turkey, residents are struggling to find transportation to travel to the earthquake-stricken area to see their relatives and loved ones. As the death toll continues to rise, we get more on the earthquake and its aftermath from VOA's Heather Murdoch reporting from Istanbul.
Rescuers in cities and towns across Syria and Turkey have been scrambling since early morning to dig people out of the rubble after one of the most powerful earthquakes this region has seen in the past century.
Which color are you wearing? Are you wearing pink? Please take care of yourself for the moment. I cannot see anything else.
Abla şu an lütfen siz kendinizi düşünün. Başka bir şey görmüyorum ben.
The first earthquake hit around 4 a.m. local time in the Gaziantep province of Turkey and had a magnitude of 7.8, the largest since 1939, according to the Turkish government. Hours later, another, only slightly less powerful earthquake hit a little less than 100 kilometers north of the original quake. Aid organizations say this region already hosts some of the most vulnerable people in the world.
This is an area where many populations have been living, particularly in northern Syria, been living with the effects of a conflict for more than 12 years now, living in very vulnerable situations, in buildings that just aren't fit for purpose, where infrastructure is already weak. And so that's why we're seeing, I think, just the numbers of people being pulled from the rubble being so high.
He says southern Turkey and northern Syria host what is likely the largest refugee and displaced persons population per capita in the world. The region is also expected to be hit by harsh winter weather in the coming days, just as masses of people have become newly homeless.
What we're also, I think, concerned about is there's going to be a large amount of people who are now in need of critical trauma care, who are going to be looking to go to health facilities that themselves are weak, that are damaged by conflict and now by the earthquake, where power is intermittent because there have been power outages because of the earthquake.
He says the reverberating impacts will continue indefinitely without renewed and sustained emergency aid to the region. Most of the deaths were reported in Turkey, but hundreds also died in Syria. The quakes could also be felt as far away as Iraq, Lebanon, Cyprus, and Egypt. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Istanbul.
U.S. President Joe Biden will address a joint session of Congress Tuesday night for his second State of the Union address amid a disappointing report card showing that 62% of Americans think he has not accomplished much during his 2 years on the job. But the president has in his favor the lowest U.S. unemployment rate in 50 years, with hundreds of thousands of new jobs being added to payrolls every month. For more on what to expect tonight, let's go live to Capitol Hill, where VOA Ignatius Anol is standing by in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Hello, Ignatius.
Hi, Esther. Good to see you again.
Definitely. Now, high inflation is the talk of town right now and across the country. Is the president likely to address this issue during his State of the Union address tonight?
Esther, just last month, President Joe Biden celebrated at the White House news that inflation continues to go down 3 months in a row. It was a good thing for the White House. And also with economists continuing to say that it looks like the country risks slipping back into recession, despite what President Joe Biden says has been a good job done as far as the economy is concerned. It would essentially be something that would take a chunk of his address, because pundits are saying that it would also be him setting the stage for perhaps an election rerun in 2024. And so that's going to be a key part of what he's going to talk about. He will be touting, for instance, a key legislation that was passed by the last Congress, which is the Inflation Reductionary Act, and what that has been able to achieve for the American people, i.e., prices continuing to fall and things looking stronger or much brighter ahead. Esther.
Some are hinting, Ignatius, that the president may be eyeing a rerun of the presidential bid during the next, the 2024 election year. But some are very concerned about his age. What are you hearing?
It's absolutely a concern that has filled the halls of Congress as well, not just locals on the streets in this country. But let me take you back to what happened in 1894 when Ronald Reagan was speaking before, the presidential debate in Kansas, where the question was posed to him because at the time he was the oldest, presidential candidate on the campaign trail. The question was, would he be able to run again at 73 years old? And indeed, he said yes. The U.S. Constitution has no limit as far as the upward age is concerned. For, senators or vice president or the president is 25 years and 35 years at the very minimum, but there's no age limit. And President Joe Biden has repeatedly said that he is in good shape. And so if this is a concern that is coming up, which, members here are raising, it's something that he's repeatedly said that he's in good shape to run for.
Ignatius, this year there are no COVID protocols, so the president will address the State of the Union. But do we know who are the notables invited tonight?
Absolutely. A Democratic representative of New York has invited the parents of 29-year-old Tyree Nichols, the black man who was bitten and later died in hospital by 5 Memphis police officers in Tennessee just last month. So their parents will be, in the halls of the chamber when President Biden addresses, the nation to draw attention to gun safety and police brutality, which is also going to be something that President Joe Biden is going to call for. He's also going to talk about the key legislation that was passed in 30 years, the gun legislation that was passed by the previous Congress. And then also when you go to the Republican side, the House Foreign Affairs Chair, Mike McCall, has also made an invitation to the very first female Afghanistan ambassador to the United States, Roya Romani, also to draw attention to the controversial withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan. Just so you know, the House has begun a high-level investigation into how and what happened when, the administration withdrew from Afghanistan and the kind of, criticisms that drew from across the country and the globe. So these two people, we should be expecting them in the House later tonight.
Ignatius, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you, Esther, for having me.
Viewers, Ignatius. A new report by the United Nations International Development Agency says that sub-Saharan Africa is the new global epicenter of violent Islamic extremism and that people are increasingly joining as a result of economic factors and less by religious ones. The report by the UNDP released Tuesday reveals that 92% of recruits to extremist groups are joining for better jobs and pressing poverty when compared to the numbers in a previous report released in 2017. It says the livelihoods of many people in Africa are being badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, high inflation, and climate change. Now to a fascinating story on how some Nigerians are cashing in on election gear. In Abuja, print shop machines are churning out products with the smiling faces of presidential election front-runners on posters, flyers, and food packaging. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Nigerians go to the polls on February 25th to elect a successor to President Muhammadu Buhari, who steps down after the maximum constitutionally permissible 2 terms in office. For small businesses like Shimatex, it's time to cash in on election paraphernalia, ranging from hats, flip-flops to tissue boxes and cooking oil labels.
Wise, not much difference in our orders. Just a little, someone will come and order a few souvenirs, a few campaign materials, a few billboards, but the impact on the print industry is not as huge as it was in previous elections.
Workers poured cassava flour into blue and green bags supporting the governing All Progressive Congress's party's acronym and placed them next to a pile of red and green opposition rice packets. Nigeria is home to millions of internet users. Social media platforms such as Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube are very popular. According to Electoral Commission data, Social media is a critical campaigning tool in an election in which almost 40% of registered voters are 34 or younger. However, only some things have moved online, as political parties still commission specific gear for rallies and other in-person campaign events.
The only thing we have noticed is that there's a lot of hype on social media. Social media has played a lot of role in this, I think because of also the level of youth participation.
At a printing mall in Abuja's business district, workers pasted party logos on baseball caps and sold candidates on t-shirts. Bold political slogans flashed from white scarves are hanging in the background.
We are not seeing those things as strange. It's what we want. In short, the most craziest of order for a printer is a good job. So there is no strange job.
18 candidates want to take over from Muhammadu Buhari. Still, 3 top contenders are competing in a battle that pits the old guard against a third-party candidate seeking to harness anger among young Nigerians. Bola Tinubu is the flag bearer for the ruling All Progressive Congress, a party helped to form with Buhari a decade ago. Nicknamed the Godfather of Lagos, the 70-year-old is the influential former governor of Nigeria's most popular city. Nigeria's main opposition party is supporting Atiku Abubakar. The 76-year-old former vice president is in the running for the presidency. He lost to Buhari in 2019. Looking to upset the established order is Peter Obi, the 61-year-old former banker and former governor of Anambra, says he wants to build a new Nigeria. His policies include tripling power generation and better funding for the military. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Still to come, in our health report, HIV and AIDS remains the leading killer in Africa. But first, Haiti Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll discuss U.S. President Joe Biden's first State of the Union address since Republicans seized control of the House of Representatives, and a special interview with Sudanese-British philanthropist Mo Ibrahim to review the latest Ibrahim Index of African Governance, which measures and monitors the state of governance in African countries. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
The Democratic Republic of Congo government is blaming the M23 rebels for an attack on a helicopter that killed a United Nations peacekeeper. A helicopter operated by the peacekeeping force MONUSCO came under fire Sunday after taking off from the city of Beni. M23 denies the accusation. General Norbert Debira, 73, once close to the Republic of Congo's veteran hardline president Denis Sassou Nguesso, has been released from prison after serving a 5-year term for an alleged assassination plot. Debira was previously Inspector General of the Armed Forces and Senior Commissioner for Reintegrating the Armed Forces, but fell out with Nguesso in 2018. A Moroccan appeals court is increasing the prison sentences of 8 migrants over a deadly attempted crossing into the Spanish enclave of Melilla. 3 defendants given a 4-year term had initially been sentenced to 3 years behind bars, and 5 others initially given 2.5 years had their sentences increased to 3 years. South Sudanese are still excited about Pope Francis' recent visit to the country, where he held an open-air mass attended by more than 70,000 people. Before departing for the Vatican, the pontiff appealed to the people of South Sudan to lay down their weapons and never lose hope, but to seize the opportunity to build peace. Earlier, I spoke to Jok Madut Jok, a professor of anthropology at Syracuse University, and I began by asking him how likely South Sudanese authorities will heed the Pope's call to end ethnic fighting.
So the question is whether the leaders of South Sudan will actually respond positively to this. If track record and history of their behavior is anything to go by, I doubt there will be an immediate change coming because they have not shown a capacity to respond to these calls in the past, including in 2019, the Pope himself kissed their feet in beseeching them to prioritize peace and take care of welfare of their people.
And what do you think they will not heed his call this time around?
Well, first of all, there are immense challenges facing that country where there are multitudes of armed groups fighting the government, where the government is also involved in state violence against citizens, where the security forces are indisciplined and have been involved in spreading firearms to the citizens, communities to fight each other. And so to rein in all these groups is going to require forgiveness, but also stern state power and state coercion in a just and equitable way. And I think these are not easily attainable in the current situation in South Sudan. So it's not just a matter of the leaders not responding. It is also a question of the difficulty of the situation. And to reduce violence and communal warfare, the level of acrimony between communities takes leadership, and it takes dedication and forgiveness. And I think that is going to be a serious challenge for the people of South Sudan. And the coming of the Pope might have lifted the spirits in the country as a whole, but it might not necessarily translate into action.
What do you think the Pope's message was when he stood side by side with two other church leaders from two different denominations that are not of Roman Catholic faith?
Well, that is why the visit itself is so significant, not only for South Sudan, but for the world, as the history of the church has shown that there have been no movements such as this, where the Church of England, the Church of Scotland, and the Catholic Church have worked together on anything like this, as their visit is a pilgrimage, peace pilgrimage, as it was called, to try to bring attention to this vexing problem in South Sudan. And so it's a message of hope for the whole world. If these leaders succeed in influencing the events from now on in that country, such that peace prevails in that country, it will bring hope to the other places around the world that are suffering conflict, such as Syria, Myanmar, the Central African Republic, Congo itself, and Ukraine.
That was Jok Madut Jok, a professor of anthropology at Syracuse University and co-founder of the Sud Institute. Former U.S. President George W. Bush's emergency plan for AIDS relief, PEPFAR, recently had its 20th anniversary. About 38 million people worldwide live with HIV, and 70% of them live in Africa, according to the Medical Express. Mkamiti Kibayasi joins us now to tell us more. Hello, Mkamiti.
Hi, thank you, Esther. HIV remains leading killer in Africa despite progress in donations. Meanwhile, African nations are committed to ending AIDS in children by 2030. I spoke to Dr. David Sando, the leading NGO for PEPFAR and CDC programs in Tanzania. He says the number of HIV/AIDS infections among men and women has dropped.
The number of infection has decreased over time. We have seen a massive decrease in people who are infected annually with HIV/AIDS. I'll give you an example. Starting from 2010 to 2022, we've seen a drop of close to 50 percentage point in terms of number of people who are infected with HIV/AIDS. So in 2010, we had an estimated number of about 100,000 people who were infected with HIV/AIDS. That number did go down to almost 50,000 last year, which means a decrease, a cut of about 50%. We are also seeing the same trend when you look in different subgroups. So you look at adolescents who are 10 to 19 years, you see that the infection is going down, despite the fact that they've not enjoyed a greater benefit as compared to other groups, but we've seen their number also going down. We also see the same in terms of mother-to-child transmission, so number of babies who are born with mothers who are living with HIV/AIDS who end up being infected with HIV has also gone down. And when you compare this between 2010, where the number was around 17,000, so 17,000 babies were infected with HIV/AIDS in 2010. But when you look at this was the statistics from 2021, about 9,400 were infected. So this is also a big drop. It's about 45% drop in terms of infection rate between, from mothers who are living with HIV/AIDS, pregnant women infecting their babies. So overall, the number has gone down. Even when you look at the death rate, the number of deaths has also gone down. So I know that ending HIV epidemic by 2030 is an ambitious goal. Yes, it is ambitious given the resources and the level of epidemic, the burden of disease that we have as of now, but yet this is attainable. It still requires, with all the achievements that we've seen, with all the great milestones that the government have, really been at the forefront, but still a lot needs to be done in terms of increasing political commitment, increasing community engagement, but also, changing some of the strategies. We will not be able to achieve this if we continue to do business as usual. So people who are living with HIV/AIDS, women, adolescents, girls, and young women who are being left out, they need to be at the center of these efforts now. And as we are seeing now, there's a lot of push towards making strategies that really addresses the need of these, groups, special groups that have not yet, gained so much with all the investment that have been done. So I believe that it's attainable, but a lot has to be done between now, because we are talking of only 7 years now. And 7 years is not a lot really to change the curve. But I believe that with the great effort that we've seen from the government, the Honorable Dr. Mama Samia, the President of the country, the Minister of Health and Minister of PRH, there's really a lot of strong coordination and political will now to make sure that Tanzania realize its commitment to ending HIV epidemic by 2030.
Australia is set to host the 12th International AIDS Society Conference in July. It will spotlight world advances in HIV research. Esther, back to you.
Thank you so much, Mkamiti. That was Mkamiti Kibayasi. An excellent interview there. Be sure to watch Africa 54 and Health Reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us. Good night.